Okay, can everyone see my screen okay? It should be like a Google Chrome or a
Yep.
Google slide. Cool. Awesome. Well, everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the Arborist call. For those who don't know me, my name is Ian Sagstetter with ECC, also known as Janus in the forums. I mean, not in the forum, in the forums and in the Discords. And just to let everyone know, we are reporting. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Click into this, make sure we're good to go. And then obviously this is December 15th, 2022. And the agenda for today, we're just gonna have a welcome and a meeting intro. We'll pass it off to the Zcash Foundation for any updates around Zebra, and then also pass it off to Nate after that for updates on research and implementation. And then we'll have the ECC core team and anyone else from ECC who has updates for the community as well. And then after that, we'll move into some discussions, see if anyone in the call has questions, and then we'll wrap up the call and see if there's any more comments from the audience. And that's the structure of the call today. Just to let everyone know, I will be hosting the Arborist calls in the short-term, near-term future. I'm going to be putting out a forum post within like the next 48 hours. There's been an issue with the scheduling of the event because I believe the event was scheduled on a Pacific time calendar, so it was subject to like changing hours, not relative to UTC. So I'm going to delete the calendar event that we have internally that we're managing off of and starting a new one based on UTC time to make sure that we're not having any schedule issues there. And then also with regards to the registration page, it's all listed as one time and not the alternating times. I'm going to be creating a new registration page based on UTC time with the alternating times that we've been doing for these calls over the last little while. So the next piece of news from that side is the Arborist call scheduled for December 29th. It's going to be canceled due to the holiday season. We have a lot of people on PTO, and I would imagine that some people in the various organizations building on Zcash are taking some time off as well for the holiday seasons. And we are still looking for community members that would be potentially interested in hosting the Arborist calls in 2023. If you are interested in doing that, you can reach out to Nate at electriccoin.co if you're interested. So let's start moving forward. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move over? I'm going to check the Q&A really quickly here as well. Yep. Deirdre and Theo are going to move you guys both up to panelists as well really quickly as I'm fielding any questions. Okay.
For community members hosting Arborist call, what are, I assume maybe some people are wondering what that might entail. So I'm not exactly sure on the details, but I think it might be, you know, we have like the calendar event set up and the Zoom hosting set up, and then we just start rotating through who hosts or who does the MC, like Ian is doing now. And part of the thinking there is just to, you know, get more community involvement and sort of rotate around organizations, because generally at ECC we want to try to, you know, spread out responsibility and rotate around some responsibilities that are broad or open to the community to have more stakeholdership. And so then maybe once we're doing that, maybe it evolves into something more, more collaboration on setting agendas, more collaboration on figuring out who to invite or who to ask to come present on things and things of that nature. So let me know if you're interested.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. And yeah, one thing, if there's any background noise, I'm next to a highway. Apologize for any of that. I'll make sure when I'm not speaking here on out that I'll turn my mic off. So just a quick overview of what Arborist calls are and their purpose. They're biweekly calls where Zcash protocol contributors convene to discuss the upgrade timelines and process, protocol research and development efforts, design and implementation of new protocol features, and where they can all collaborate to identify blockers and unresolved issues. And the purpose of that is to make the core Zcash protocol development accessible for a wider set of participants and provide more transparency to the community at large, as anyone from the community can join these calls, ask questions, join the discussion, etc. So who can participate? Any member of the public interested in learning about the Zcash protocol development can register for these calls. As mentioned, we'll be putting out a new register page here soon. And if you want to present something in depth and have an agenda item relevant to the Zcash protocol, you can contact me at isagstetter@electriccoin.co and present a presentation slot. So there's other ways to get involved in Zcash. If you're not aware, you can apply for a Zcash community grant to work on things around like user education, different things building on top of the protocol relative to interesting things that teams want to build on Zcash. A good example of that is the ZSA work being done by Kedit. So some great opportunities there. There's opportunities with the Filecoin and ECC grant program. The website is up now. That's a grant that will be paid out in PHIL tokens. And I believe there's around $5 to $9 million available, and building things interesting like doing Filecoin storage payments in native shielded Zec. So there are some really interesting things you could be doing on that side. And as well, you could join the Zcash R&D Discord, where a lot of discussions around all these interesting topics and all the cool things happening on the Zcash protocol are taking place. So with moving on now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it off to the Zcash Foundation for some updates around Zebra. So I'm going to stop share, mute my mic, and I think anyone should be good to go to share.
Yeah, hey, so I don't actually have anything to present. I'm Tior, I'm the current Zebra team lead at the Zcash Foundation. So I'm just going to talk through some recent updates that we've done to Zebra. About a week ago, we released our RC.2 release. So that's our third release candidate. And in that, we implemented ZIP 317, the conventional fee for evicting mempool transactions. And we fixed an occasional crash and memory errors when Zebra's RPC server was shutting down. So yeah, if you're using Zebra's RPCs, that would be a good release to upgrade to. And we've also been, but we've mainly been focusing on getting support for mining pools implemented in Zebra. So at the moment, this is all behind a Rust feature because it's not production quality code, but we've finished off the main two RPCs. They're used by mining pools. That's get block template and submit block. And we're busy filling in other RPCs that mining pools use for statistics or checking status or those kinds of things. So the full details are in our, will be in our release notes when they're ready. Recently, we just got to the point where we can produce block templates that are pretty similar to Zcashds. We're currently working through some differences that are allowed by the consensus rules in order to match Zcashd to make sure that we are producing valid blocks, because one way to do that is to make sure we're producing the same block template as Zcashd. So yeah, that's about where we're up to there. Happy to answer any questions that people have. Oh, right, and the other thing that's in the draft, the next release is that we implemented ZIP 317 for block selection for the block template. So that will refuse to mine or delay mining very large transactions if that pay a very low fee, if the mempool is full or if there are a lot of them in the mempool. So yeah, that's about where we're up to. Happy to answer any questions now or later.
I have a question. What is your criteria for switching from release candidates to production release?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that all of the production code in Zebra has been audited before we call Zebra a stable release. And so we've tagged, I think it was release candidate 1. Yeah, then we'll say to the auditors, hey, can you check this and make sure it's okay? So similar to what Zcashd does, we want to make sure it's audited before we say it's ready. And then also a lot of the draft stuff that we're working on is hidden behind a Rust feature. So it isn't production code yet. So it's not getting audited.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for the update there. Is there any other questions that maybe some of the attendees of the call might have that they would want to either, let's see, we've got one right here. So I'm going to, see, we've got a question from Brandon. Brandon, I think you're able to go ahead now. And I believe you're on mute currently. Looks like that might have been a mistake. No worries there. So yeah, I guess for the next steps then, I'm just gonna share my screen again so we can get back. Is there anything else from the foundation that might want to be shared before we move on to research and implementation status?
I can give a quick Frost update for
Okay.
our threshold signatures work. I think we have completed the last call period for IRTF. We think the Frost specification for threshold signatures that we plan to use in a randomized variant for Zcash signing looks good to go. We're making some small changes out of the feedback we got in the last call period. So we'll be cutting a version 12, and then we think that is the version that will become a real boy RFC. And then it'll be kind of locked and loaded. We've updated all of our Rust code that implements the RFC draft to be compatible, and our colleague Conrado has implemented all the parameter sets that are listed in the document, and that includes ED 448. If you want an ED 448 threshold signature in your life, we've got one for you. And he's working on the randomized variants for the Zcash parameters, including red jub jub and red palace for sapling and orchard, respectively, that we need to create threshold sign transactions. So that is happening and ongoing. And we are planning, knock wood, to doing releases of all the Frost parameter set signature libraries. So like Frost, Restretta, ED 5519, P56, Sec P26K1, and ED 448 to crates.io really soon, hopefully before I go on holiday. And we'll be keeping those up to date with any changes with the RFC. And that's pretty much it for Frost right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Adi, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just curious if anyone from the Zebra team has tried running Zec Wallet full node with a Zebra D running on the side. Because as I understand, the Zec Wallet full node needs an active Zcashd client running. So just wondering if anyone has tried it running with a Zebra D node.
I think we had a look at that, but I'm not sure where we got to. I don't know what RPC's Zec wallet, full wallet needs. So yeah, it would depend if we've implemented those RPCs yet. We just implemented the ones that were needed by Light Wallet D, and now we're moving on to implementing the ones that are needed by mining pools. But yeah, if that happens to overlap with what's needed by Zec Wallet full node, then it should just work, hopefully. If not, and it's something simple, definitely open a ticket. But yeah, I don't think we've looked into it in detail. I know we looked at it as a way of maybe testing things.
Thank you.
Nate has a question.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up to that. I'm not certain, but I thought maybe Zec Wallet full node used Zcashd's wallet RPC calls. So if that's true, then it relies on Zcashd to like hold wallet secrets and do scanning and generate transactions and things of that nature. So I was curious if Zebra planned to add that kind of functionality to Zebra or not. Yeah, just curious. That's the question.
Yes, a good question. So we don't have any plans to add wallet support inside Zebra at the moment. but we are working on things that maybe would require wallet support. So we might do that in the process, but we're just not ready to, announce stuff yet. So it's kind of, there's nothing happening yet. It is sort of out there in the future as a maybe if there are compelling use cases we need to support for it. So yeah, I guess if it is using wallet calls, then no, Zebra doesn't have wallet support. We rely on Light Wallet D for that. So that's the supported way to use a wallet with Zebra.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what the other Zcash developers think, but I personally often wish the wallet functionality was not embedded in the Zcashd code base, or at least not the same process, at least. Yeah, I was keyed into that.
That is part of our reasoning. So we were hesitant to host spending keys in particular in the same address space as an entire implementation of a consensus node and network parser and all of those things. Even though it's in Rust, there's still the potential for particularly privacy leaks in the same process. So that was our concern. And so that's one of the reasons that if we were to go ahead with that, we would have a long think about our architecture before we implemented things that handled your private spending keys.
Yeah, cool. Good to hear.
We had a design for a separate binary that would basically be a separate wallet, and it would communicate with your ZebraD by, registering viewing keys to do scanning or, whatever. But we haven't pursued that yet because it requires a whole other binary. And, we wanted to support the Light Wallet D cases and the mining cases before we even thought about building our own wallet functionality, whether it's part of ZebraD or part of a separate binary or what.
Excuse me. Awesome. Is there anything else from the foundation on the Zebra side or the Frost side before we pass it over to Nate for the ECC research?
Just a minor thing in our, we got a bug report about Zebra not handling the Zcash network protocol quite correctly. So yeah, in our next release, there'll be an update that makes Zebra handle I think the version message, so connection setup more correctly. It's still not quite like Zcashd because Zcashd allows a whole bunch of optional fields, but at the very least will be compatible with things that don't send the relay fields at the end of the version message. So yeah, that's just there in the next release for people who are trying to run Zebra with, say, and get it to appear on block explorers or network explorers or those kinds of things, or DNS seeders. We think we fixed some bugs that stopped it appearing on those a little while ago. This is another one that might be causing that problem. I see there's another question, which is, so from Zek Profit, so Zebra app dev should assume Light Wallet D will be required to interface with ZebraD. So the answer to that is, if you want to run a wallet, then use Light Wallet D. If you want to use the JSON RPC calls in another way, then feel free to call them directly. So for example, we've had people who are interested in just getting, just looking up information for particular transparent addresses, or just looking up various kinds of statistics and those kinds of things. So yeah, you need to use something that either talks JSON RPC or directly, or sits in the middle and translates that to a protocol that you understand, like the Light Wallet protocol. Yes, I think so. So the question is, use Light Wallet D or ZebraD? I guess effectively, you should use Light Wallet D if you want to run a wallet, or you should use ZebraD directly if you want to call some other JSON RPC calls.
Will
Awesome. Thanks for oh, go ahead, Strad. Sorry.
Yeah, just as far as the RPCs then, so is submit transaction one of the RPCs that was needed for Light Wallet D?
Yeah. So currently we have support for submit raw transaction. And then if you activate the get block template RPC, you can also submit a block that you've mined elsewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely
So if
those
someone
RPCs are included.
Yeah, so if someone wanted to do like their own wallet stuff or messaging stuff or anything themselves, what they could do is just have their own process that's using like the Rust crates or something else to do that building, and then use ZebraD to submit the transactions to the network.
Yeah.
Wanted to.
Or you could use the Zebra JSON RPCs directly if you want to write a wallet that's a bit more low level. All that flexibility is there. There should be enough functionality to do that. If there's something small missing, please open a ticket and let us know.
Awesome. Thank you. Nate, going to pass it over to you for the research on the ECC side.
Yes, hello. I noticed one other question. So Otto Tunafish was sharing a project they're working on called Zclimate, which is it looks like it's a front end for Zcash CLI wallet. Is that true? Anyway, if you are curious to check that out, its code is at github.com/autotunafish/zclimate. Cool. Okay. Yes. ECC research and implementation status updates. So research update is that I've effectively paused research I was doing on proof of stake and interop in order to focus with the rest of ECC on engineering improvements to address the performance issues, especially for shielded mobile wallets, given the high output transaction load. So that's sort of been our full focus across ECC engineering team. So the protocol research stuff I was doing has been paused while we focus on that. We're still doing Halo improvements towards adding support for recursion. And that about covers research. So the once we feel like we've gotten to a place where shielded wallet users are able to use their wallets without significant usability disruptions, even in the face of the high load, then we will begin to sort of branch out into more priorities again. But our plan, even then, is to focus still on improving mobile wallet scalability and performance further, like beyond just sort of remediating the current usability issues, but we want to turn some of our like research attention on, okay, can we make like qualitative improvements in scalability or UX? And so we plan to spend about a year focused on that, during which time we probably wouldn't make much progress on proof of stake or interop unless, I mean, we are likely to be doing early pieces of those and also investigating how they might relate to payment scalability improvements. So that's the update there. Any questions? I see. Oh, those are old questions. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Did you raise your hand?
Can you tell us a little more about what sort of directions you're looking at for wallet scalability? I think one of the motivations of recursive proving with Halo 2, which hasn't been deployed yet, but is one of the promises, is that deploying recursive verifying proofs would have scalability for the network, or the full, you know, as you approach the limit cost of trying to verify the whole chain. Is
Yeah.
this part of that, or sort of the same target, or is there a different set of ideas that you're pursuing for wallet scalability?
For wallet scalability, so first of all, we haven't like in earnest started looking at it because we're focused more on making scanning work well now using the current current light wallet D design and current shielded mobile designs. But then we do want to investigate payment scalability improvements. And you're right that like recursive proving, like a lot of the focus on how that could be useful would be to improve validation of full nodes, which doesn't help mobile wallet UX directly.
Right.
So the kinds of things we've had discussions about might be ways to replace Light Wallet D or augment it. So like a simpler example might be adding some sort of out-of-band signaling service that has that protects privacy properties, but allows a sender to send a notification to a recipient that they've sent a payment. So this could be like a hint of which blocks to scan, or it could just be the transaction itself. That's like a brainstorm. I think that's the primary brainstorm we've had so far that I'm aware of. Is there a follow-up comment?
Would that be on chain, or would that require separate infrastructure to facilitate?
The thinking for that would be it would be off chain. So one way to do it is it would be like an auxiliary system that wouldn't modify any of the existing infrastructure. And so if it fails, everything would continue operating in the current way. Instead, it would be an auxiliary like notification system for recipients to notice incoming payments sooner, if that makes sense.
How would this be better or different than me just signaling my friend that I just sent you a payment?
That is basically equivalent in terms of
yeah, it doesn't let your wallet, you would still need to wait for your wallet to detect the incoming payment. So this would be like a way to speed up or shortcut that process.
Okay.
That's not really a scalability improvement. It's like a UX performance improvement, and it's arguable how much of an improvement it is because it has various trade-offs. But that's one example of how we want to start brainstorming different ways to make sending shielded payments either work better for users, so that there's like better alacrity in when they notice an incoming payment or when they can use their change. And then a separate thing we might want to consider is, are there ways we can improve like the scalability of shielded payments? And that might involve a lot of things. So we might want to be considering how much is Light Wallet D a bottleneck, and are there improvements we can make around that? So yeah, early days. Any more questions?
Yeah, we've got one from Addy first, and then one from Dodger to follow up, and then Deirdre's also has another one there. So Addy, we'll have you go first here.
Yeah, so I have two questions. First is, since the size of the blockchain has grown a lot, many users cannot run the full node. So has there any thought been given to having a pruned version of the Zcashd running, like not caring of the past history if we have certain checkpoints?
We have given some thought to that. We have prioritized shielded wallet UX as like the #1 priority. So even so the blockchain size growth is a problem, and it's like a secondary priority for us right now. So we've discussed some, like an expedient thing we might do is ask miners to configure a setting that would reduce the size of blocks that they generate. Yeah.
It doesn't help with historic issues, though, in terms of like the current size now. And regarding that, like Zcashd does have some support for pruning, and there are things you can configure. It doesn't work in all cases because it wasn't something that had been historically like necessary and maintained. So it is something that is there and that we can, effort can be put in. And while it's not currently our priority to work on that right now, because as Nathan said, we're doing other things right now, we would very happily accept PRs that improved Zcashd's pruning ability if someone had time to work on that. Otherwise, it will very likely happen at some point, just not in the immediate short term.
Got it. So my second question was around the timeline for ECC's next year focus on the UX. There is a want in the community, and they want to know, when is the ECC mobile wallet expected? So is it going to be sometime next year or end of the year? Any idea there?
I'm not too certain yet. I think that our focus on improving existing usability and performance issues is largely focused on improving our SDK. So that has slowed down to some degree development of our own wallet, although we have an early prototype that we're developing against our SDK, and we're using that to sort of validate the design of the SDK, along with working with the downstream SDK wallets. I'm really bad at predicting timelines, but I don't think it's likely we would be able to ship our own mobile wallet within before the first half of the year. It seems plausible we could do it by the latter half of the year. I'm not highly confident we could do it by the latter half of the year. So.
Awesome. Dodger, I know you have a question, but Paco, is there anything that you want to add to that answer really quick? Because I know that's an area that you're working on.
Yeah, totally. To chime in on what Nate said, we're 100% or 20%, if that's possible, or even more, in fixing the SDKs and make them can pass for everyone that uses them. The ECC flagship wallet, or whatever we call it, it's totally in the second or third background place until we sort everything else out. So it's we just work on it whenever we are blocked or something, whatever you do, maybe people will just play Wordle or something, and maybe we just fix the bug on the prototype instead. That's the word we're giving it, that wallet right now, and our complete focus is on the SDKs and things that are for everyone to use.
Awesome. Thanks, Paco. Dodger.
So three things. I seem to recall years ago we discussed, and there was a specific terminology for it, which I can't remember. I'm hoping that Strad will remember.
Are you thinking of detection keys?
No, that's number two.
Okay.
But the first one is was the ability to I think it was Aaron Tromer's idea way back, to be able to send Zcash to somebody without them having a
you're thinking of
Zcash
liberated
address.
payments.
Liberated payments.
Liberated
That's the
payments.
phrase I was looking for. So is that something that you guys are looking at? So that's number one. Secondly, you know, the scale, you know, the sandblast attack that we're calling it, the sandblasting of the Zcash network got us thinking about scalability as well, and you know, performance of mobile wallets, and how do we move away from this model where your mobile wallet has to download every single shielded transaction before it can detect. And you know, number one, you know, there's obviously detection keys that requires a change to the protocol. So Deirdre has been looking at what OMR might possibly enable, in the hope that might enable something without requiring a change to the protocol and network upgrade. It doesn't look like it will. There's a draft blog post that'll be coming out in the not too distant future that'll summarize Deirdre's research. But you know, it feels to me like a way to make quick progress would be to implement detection keys. And I know that it's not just, you know, I know it's not as straightforward as simply doing that. I know that there's some figuring out about how do you derive the detection key and all that sort of stuff, and making sure that it doesn't allow people to link payments and so on. But it does feel like, you know, my gut feel is that it's a doable solution in a relatively near term, as opposed to being something that we're looking at, you know, being years away. So I wanted to ask if that's something that you guys have been thinking about as well. And I can forget what the third thing was, but it'll come back to me later. So yeah, number one, liberated payments. Number two, detection keys.
Yeah, we have discussed and thought about those things, and those are the kinds of things on our mind in the bucket of payment scalability improvements. But again, we're not actually starting that research yet. So I would expect we may start like after the first quarter of 2023, and that's still a guess, because our current work on improving usability with the current sandblasting is largely focused on changing our SDK. We are planning on potentially adding a new method to Light Wallet D to facilitate like a faster kind of scanning, and developing that and shipping it will take a while, a few months. Yeah, so liberated payments, detection keys, this sort of out of band hint thing I mentioned, and oblivious message retrieval. Those are all the kinds of things we do want to focus on, that we're saying we want to prioritize that kind of stuff before continuing with like proof of stake in 2023. So yeah, I look forward to like examining those different options, you know, with the community in 2023.
I think you know, we'd certainly, I think, be interested in doing a bit of a deep dive on detection keys to try and figure out, you know, what the lift is there, what the prerequisites are, how difficult it's going to be, and whatnot. But I'll shut up about people who actually have their hands on stuff.
We did have like at least I was party to at least one conversation about that, and we do have some concerns about performance on a Light Wallet D, right? So if there's a bunch of different trade-offs. So if each wallet has its own detection key, then the Light Wallet D's load grows with the number of users it's supporting. There might be another way that you could have like a shared detection key with the Light Wallet D server that all the clients use, but then there's privacy challenges, but maybe that would, right? So we've talked a little bit about it, but not enough to sort of suss out like what the next step that would be nice to do is to put all of these ideas next to each other and start sussing out what are the trade-offs and how complex are each one and things like that. We haven't done that yet.
Yeah, one idea that crossed my mind was the potential for a computational load and therefore a cost. As Adi is acutely aware of, then running the light wallet is potentially significant. If only there were a way of paying someone to scan for you. If there was some kind of coin you could use to make that payment, like a micropayment. Here, I want you to scan the next 10,000 blocks. I want you to monitor the next 10,000 blocks with this detection key, and and then a response comes back. Yeah, sure, it'll cost you X satoshis, and then you pay it, and then it does it. So I think that enabling micropayments is something that that could have a lot of use cases. But anyway, again, I'll shut up.
Great. Strad, I don't know if you wanted to add, Deirdre's got a question, but I don't know if you wanted to add something onto Nate's answer there, or do you have another question?
I might have. It was a little while ago, but I put my hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the thing I was going to say is just that the as far as for stuff like detection keys and things, like a lot of there has been a fair bit of movement since we first started investigating them, back in like 2019 and even earlier, I think. And so there are definitely some more viable options that if someone wanted to spend some time and mocking out what that would look like as a proposal, that would be a way that someone in the community could help shortcut some of these investigation things, because the actual act of getting something in like that is going to require a network upgrade for the most part, I would expect, because there are things that could be done to hide it in existing transactions, but they end up rather messy, and we do network upgrades, so it'd be far cleaner to deploy that sort of thing in a network upgrade. So now is definitely the kind of time for people who are interested in and invested in this kind of thing existing to be putting together mock-ups of what it would look like, which would make our job as with my protocol hat on, our job as protocol reviewers and engineers of determining how things will fit in easier to evaluate if the options that are being considered are directly sort of available rather than needing the R&D still.
Awesome, thank you. And Deirdre, your question now?
I have a list. One is the new Lightwell-D API, DagSync, or something like DagSync. Related,
yeah. Okay. The one that's going to be coming in the near future, probably, hopefully early next year, like January-ish, is just a way to get the necessary data for the witness tree update logic through to the client. Chris has been doing some excellent work on the new tree structure. We've actually been through several different tree structures and different designs and ideas for how the tree component of DagSync will work. And if Chris is here, you can give more of a comment about how that works. But the short piece in terms of what Lightwell-D needs for this piece is each compact block that gets synchronized. In addition to what it currently has, we would need the ability to annotate the position in the tree of the first note in the compact block, basically to index, to locate within the tree where the range of, when you do a get blocks request and you get a stream of blocks, where does each block live in the tree. The ability to filter, potentially, not necessary to begin with, but eventually potentially the ability to filter compact blocks so you can get a view of the stream that's just the note commitments, for instance. So you can say, I need information about this subtree in the commitment tree. I can just stream that data, but I don't need all of the outputs, for instance. You may still want to do the outputs because your particular the DagSync algorithm can be adaptive in terms of bandwidth and decisions and things. But then the main new RPC is that the other thing that you need is the ability to access, to gain roots of subtrees. Currently, the subtree depth that we're thinking of is 16. So each 2 to the 16th subtree, so essentially halfway up the tree, the root of that would be something that all that like clients would be able to query. Which in the case of Zcashd, we already store that information implicitly in the way we store like the compact tree like the incremental Merkle tree frontier per block. You can from that recover the root of each of the 2 to the 16 trees, just because of the way that because a single block cannot contain 2 to the 16 notes. It's impossible for a single block to span more than one 2 to the 16 subtree.
This is very cool.
Yeah, so as a result of that, you can, it's equivalent if you'd heard us in previous things talk about bridges. It's the newer way of thinking about doing that kind of thing. These are just like points in the nodes within the tree that if you can just fetch, be able to fetch a couple of those points, you can, along with the leaf nodes, you can basically do all the fast forwarding you need to.
Very cool. Are you implementing this in Rust? Can we use it?
Yes.
Great.
There's a draft PR up that I can point you to.
Are you a bit quiet, Chris?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was saying there's a draft PR up that I can point you to.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay, that was my first question. My second question or point, it seems that all designs that try to offload detection either via detection keys or via OMR, the oblivious message retrieval, will offload some compute load that is linear, mostly linear, to the number of keys being registered with a full node that supports this sort of stuff, to the number of keys that are being detected for you, either fully homomorphically or less so. So I think unless we have some other kind of breakthrough there, we will continue to run into that sort of problem of a full node that's trying to do work on any number of users' behalfs. It'll continue to scale linearly to that number of users. So we'll just have to kind of live with that unless some breakthrough happens. It's just a common pattern. And then 3, so it sounds like actually leveraging the recursion properties of Halo 2 proofs that we deployed with Orchard is like getting pushed further and further down the priority list. Is that ever going to get deployed on Zcash?
I mean, just on the third point, firstly, we can't deploy recursion until recursion is implemented, and implementing recursion is still high up in the priority list. Like we have been working on it in slowly, because we have been mostly focused on the addressing performance issues, but we have had people working directly on it all this time as well. Few people, but we have had people working on it. Actually using it is obviously a conversation for once we have recursion available. So and to the second point you made, I agree with you in terms of the current techniques are basically inherently linear, which is why my thinking on this is essentially that the benefit that you get from using the current method of using the blockchain as your broadcast medium is the high privacy you get from not revealing what you request. Although, as we all know, the light clients currently then go and request the full transaction, so you reveal that transaction anywhere to your local light wallet ID. But the move to essentially shifting the detection work from being linear in the number of people using the network to being linear in the size of your personal transaction graph of like who you are making payments with, to me seems just the only way to escape that issue. Because then you're reducing the on-chain coordination is just in terms of ordering and correctness and things, and you're not relying on it. It's there if you need it, but you're not relying on it for detection. And I mean, the simplest most of that is just like making Bluetooth interaction APIs work in Android or NFC or like QR code scanning kind of thing for hints, like relatively not very interesting cryptographically, but very useful UX-wise work that that can and should happen to just like help those, even without like, you know, using a mixed net or using hidden services or using, you know, whatever other mechanisms we come up with potentially for, you know, stop and forward mailers or whatever. There's a lot we can do in the short term, in the near term at the wallet UX layer to alleviate this kind of pressure.
Thanks.
Awesome. Nate, you have comments out there?
Yeah, I had a comment on recursion or recursive proofs. So I have the impression, and I'm not as like close to the actual work as a lot of other people at ECC, but I have the impression recursion, like we have a fairly good idea of how it's helpful to improve the amount of data validating nodes need to retrieve or validate. But I'm less certain how it may be helpful with payments. And it feels like payments is really kind of the linchpin or should be more of the priority, at least right now. So my current thinking on recursion is it is likely to be helpful down the road, maybe around a proof of stake transition, or maybe prior to that, for making validators lighter cost, but that doesn't directly improve shielded payment scalability, and that seems like it should be the higher priority. Like that's the thing we want to work really well and responsively for as many users as possible. There may be applications of recursion to that I am not aware of, but that's my
I'm just aware of the
understanding.
fact that Halo 2 was sold as we should do this and we need recursion to scale Zcash. That was part of the motivation to actually do NU5, which was a big lift and delayed a lot when we had to be ready for that. So the fact that recursion is getting pushed more and more and more down the priority list, both because it's not ready in the implementation of Halo 2 that we depend on, and also the priority list because something else came up, and it's not even the sandblasting attack that's happening on mainnet. It's this other thing, which is not important, but just this thing that we sold NU5 on because everything flowed out of the adoption of Halo 2. All the big changes flowed out of that big change, which was more partially motivated by recursion, but also motivated by moving away from trusted setup. And now we don't see it getting deployed anytime soon.
Yeah, so I can describe our thinking prior to the sandblasting attack was that transitioning to proof of stake would be valuable, and so that's what we were advocating for. And I do think recursion is helpful in lowering the costs for validators. So for example, if it's possible to, for many people to run validating nodes, that has various advantages. So for example, they might be able to participate in running as validators on a proof of stake consensus system and earning a return, by earning payments from the network protocol for doing that.
Okay, but proof of stake is also being pushed down the priority list as well. So
yeah, I'm explaining our thinking prior to sandblasting. So prior to sandblasting, we believed making this transition to proof of stake would be beneficial to Zcash users as a whole. And I do believe recursion is useful for that. Once sandblasting began and we saw we have all these problems with scaling shielded payments, we changed our priorities to focus on that. Does that make sense?
not quite, but okay.
Okay. Okay. If there's anything that doesn't make sense about it, you could ask me now or in a follow-up.
I don't. Yeah, we can take it to the Discord.
I could try saying it another way. If we had no usability or scalability problems currently, even in the face of sandblasting, then I think we would be proceeding with proof of stake transition research. And I believe recursion is valuable for that. Does that make sense?
Right,
that-
but the whole Halo 2 recursion, we need recursion for scalability of Zcash, came before we were talking about proof of stake and came before sandblasting. Like, we were working on MU5 for over a year before proof of stake became a thing and before sandblasting happened.
Can I respond to this?
Yeah.
I've had my hand up for a little while on specifically for this question. So Dara would have responded by now if Z was here, but Z is on PTO, so I'm responding in part for Dara. I think there's a mix of terminology going on here in terms of what people mean by scaling, because scaling as we are currently dealing with, like right now with sandblasting, is in terms of like what, for the current capacity of the chain, how do our wallets and things function with it? Scaling, as was being talked about at the time of when Halo 2 was originally being proposed for that, is more along how do you increase the capacity of the chain? So they are two orthogonal but complementary components of scaling. The Halo 2 components and recursion and things, effectively, the way I think of it is that they are the long-term planning for that kind of long-term scalability and are still necessary components of that. And if we were doing that long-term scalability pieces, the act of doing so would also have an effect on short-term scalability in terms of, like, if you imagine like the sharding designs that were being proposed and things, then the users only need to deal with the throughput on their own shard. So if we just said, let's take the current capacity of Zcash and we just deploy recursion-based scaling as sharding, whatever, but don't actually increase the capacity of the network, then each individual user's experience would have gotten better because the amount of data they would need to process would be lower. But separately, there are also scaling improvements needed for when you have this fire hose of information that you have to process, regardless of how it ties into the rest of the Zcash consensus.
Right.
So that's essentially where I come from this, is that it is a scaling improvement, or like it enables a scaling improvement. We just unfortunately don't have the ability to work on that piece now because we're doing a different orthogonal component of the scaling improvements. But it is still, I don't think I have not seen any new information come in that has changed my opinion, at least, that that recursion-based scaling is what will be needed to be able to grow the chain beyond what its current capacity.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. And going to pause conversation real quick and see if there's anything else anyone wants to add before we shift over to updates from the ECC core team. Okay, just make sure. Okay, awesome. So we're going to move over to core updates. Don't know who from ECC is going to take it, but I'll pass off.
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, so we last couple of weeks we pushed out a I wasn't at the last Arborist course, so I don't know if it was mentioned there, but we had a 5.3.1 release, which was mostly just hotfix stuff, but it was kind of done as a normal release because we had accumulated some other bits and pieces into it. And that was mostly addressing high memory usage problems during IBD, which were a result of the somewhat a result of the changes in high load, but also just a result of the chain got to a certain point that the amount of data related to equihash has just got to the point that it needed to be kept off. So we deployed that. At the same time, a change from a community member actually came in to backport a headers first fix. So the way that Zcashd does its chain downloading as built on Bitcoin Core's design is that you always fetch the headers linearly and in order. And then you can fetch blocks in parallel and do whatever. And then just once you've received the blocks that you need to be able to connect in order, you can then update the chain in order. But you can fetch the blocks out of order, but you always fetch the headers in order. And the rationale there is that the headers were very small and the blocks are much larger, so you can do that. In Zcash's case, the headers are much larger because of the Equihash solution. And so we got to the point where basically Yeah, fetching them in order. That was the memory usage issue resulted in that. But the headers first fix, the problem that you were seeing there was that it was waiting until it had downloaded all of the headers before starting to download blocks. And so the headers first fix just fixed it. It was a bug in an upstream upstream Bitcoin core that got backported. That the fix got backported. But in doing so, that then uncovered another problem related to how basically when flushing happens. So again, another component of Zcashd's Bitcoin core-based design is that data is all cached in memory and operated on from that cache, and then the cache is periodically flushed when certain limits are exceeded. In upstream Bitcoin core, the primary input to that cache was the chain state, what they call the coins DB, because in upstream Bitcoin, all they contain is the UTXO set. In our case, it also contains the set of nullifiers and commitments and things. And that chain set is its size is managed when and tracked and managed for deciding when to flush. The Equihash solutions are now themselves effectively a cache, but on the chain data side, and that isn't being tracked correctly at the moment because there was no need to in upstream because the headers were so small. So we've temporarily in 5.3.2 reverted the headers first fix. So if you have enough memory to run your node to deal with the because essentially what was happening was the entire blockchain header would be updated, downloaded, then we'd start downloading blocks, and that would be the first point it would flush. And so it would result in a temporary doubling of memory usage to like 10 gigabytes or something. So not great, but if you have enough memory to do it, then you can run 5.3.1 and you get the benefit of the headers first fix. If you don't, 5.3.2 reverts the headers first fix temporarily, and then probably in 5.4.0, which will be out mid to late January next year, we will have fixed the caching problem so that we can have both. So that's okay. So that's the main bit on Zcashd. The other thing in Zcashd we've been doing, Greg has been working on unifying a bunch of our changes to how our transaction building works over in Zcashd's full wallet. And part of what that will enable is an RPC design that that enables you to do sort of like a propose commit style of creating transactions, which is sort of the direction that we want to move both this and also the mobile SDKs to, where the user or the RPC caller says, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to send X amount of funds to these addresses with this fee or whatever. And then you get back, okay, here is the proposed transaction, including things like what are the effects of the transaction? Who's going to go to, what change addresses outputs are going to be generated, what privacy effects is it going to have? And so like right now we have a sort of thing in there for ZSend Mini, which is like a privacy policy, which is a simple way because we don't have this two-phase API. It's a simple way for the user to say, I only want you to do things up to this privacy policy level. So it will just fail if you exceed that. With the two-phase API, the direction we're heading is it will do whatever it needs to in the proposal to satisfy what you've asked it to do. And then you can inspect the result of that and compare it to what you would have said as the privacy policy for ZSend Mini and go, am I happy with this? And if you're happy, you will be able to confirm it, and it will be actually built and sent off. And in fact, you could even do like optimistic building to improve the UX and things, which is what the mobile SDKs will probably do once that's deployed. So sort of moving to allow the user to confirm, trust that the user knows what they want to do, because like they're the ones trying to take this economic action, but give them the information necessary to make an informed choice about what they choose to do. Influenced by the wallet obviously trying to do its best practices. So if it has the ability to make a fully shielded transaction, it should do so. But if it can't do so, then it should say, well, you've still got the funds to do this, but it's going to cost you in some other way, whether that be a cost in fees or a cost in privacy leaking or whatever. Cool. So that's all Zcashd stuff happening. On the DAGsync side, we're making good progress there. I think I mentioned earlier, we talked earlier about the tree side. That's ongoing. Once that's in place, the first thing we'll be rolling out is integrating the new tree style into the mobile SDKs and into Zcashd and Lightwallet D. And what that will enable is basically splitting up the syncing process into the first thing the wallet does is takes any notes it already knows about and makes them spendable. And then we run the existing linear sync process. So this is essentially the first step of DAGsync, where DAGsync is to break everything up. But we want to get this bit out the door first. So it won't help people who are running multiple wallets. You will run into problems where you will get transactions that are trying to be spending notes that might have already been spent by the other wallet you were running if you're running the same seed of multiple wallets. But that's just that you have the same problem right now, but this will concretely help as a first step single wallet users to make funds spendable. And the exact same stuff under the hood is what DAGsync will be doing to enable. In that case, it would just be racing, making the existing notes spendable and figuring out if those existing notes have been spent on chain, and that will then basically remove that UX hiccup for multi-wallet users. And then the other thing that we're then doing, because in the zip sync meetings we've been working through on zip 317. So we've started out looking at implementing those changes into Zcashd with the hope to have them ready for 5.4.0. That is a lower priority where the DAGsync changes take priority. So I'm just working on that while I have downtime around these pieces. But yeah, we'll get those in as into Zcashd as quickly as we can.
Awesome.
Any questions about that? Also, I already mentioned earlier the Halo 2 recursion work is ongoing. Oh, and also related to that, because it happened last week, we've started up a developer call for Halo 2. So we were already running, it's been running most of this year, we've been running office hours. So people who were using the Halo 2 stack could, we were around for an hour a week. It often turned into 2 hours because things got interesting. But we would just make ourselves available for people to come along and ask questions. So it wasn't really directed anyway. It was just like whoever turned up and had a question, that's sort of what we'd end up working on. But we've now set up another call, and with the timing of it's going to be shifted a little bit early next year, I think, once we can sort of verify who's coming and what time zones they'll work well in. But this one's more focused on people who are developing Halo 2. So the bigger projects like Scroll, ZKVM, Osmosis, other ones who are trying to use the Halo 2 stack for their own projects. And are making their own changes on top of it in downstream forks. We need somewhere to basically have more coordination between them and us to coordinate bringing changes back in, kind of like Arborist callers for Zcash users. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, and are part of a project working on using Halo 2 and developing it, extending it, you should join the Halo 2 ecosystem Discord channel. There are links to it in various places. If you search for it, you will probably find it, and I'm sure someone will attach it to wherever, the comments of wherever you are viewing the recording of this. There's a call channel that we track there, and also we use the Discord events thing to keep an eye on them. Although I think we view them in Meet at the moment. But yeah, so we started that up to coordinate on that, and we're going to also be making trying to make some sort of organizational changes to how we bring in features to sort of try and add a little bit more flexibility and for people who are trying to do like more nightly style things with Halo 2, while still enabling the base version of what's there to be stable and production ready and reliable. Kind of the model I currently have in my head is kind of like the Rust nightly beta stable kind of thing. We've still got to figure out exactly how it's going to play out, because certain kinds of changes are invasive enough that they don't really work as a like just feature flag it off as a nightly feature. So we've got a little bit more experimentation to do there. But the goal there have been to make external contributions easier and help the whole ecosystem, including Zcash, benefit from those changes.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Chad. Is there anything anyone else from the ECC team wants to add to that? Okay, great. We're going to move now into any open discussion that anyone might have for the remainder of this call. So just if there's any questions from any of the attendees or anyone up here that's currently speaking, yeah, open discussion for the remainder of the call.
Chip. Yeah, I've just been talking for a while, so I don't really have much more to say, but
I actually have a question that may be a little bit out of left field, but for people who come from the community who might not be into into the developer side, or maybe is not as technically adept, what are some of the best resources that they can go to kind of learn more about these things and maybe have a better understanding when they come into these calls in the future? Are there any channels you'd recommend, calls that do these types of things, learning groups, etc.?
So as far as to learn what's going on in terms of general, or in terms of upskilling on the kinds of topics we're discussing?
I would say the latter.
Right. How does one learn all this? Years of pain.
Yeah. Read all the zips in the Zcash spec.
Yeah. Probably the easiest way to pick some of this stuff up would be yeah, I mean, starting by reading things. Not all of the zips are as approachable as others. We've refined the way we do zips over time, but we try and make the subcomponents of things a bit easier to understand. And that is also kind of one of the fertile grounds of stuff that leads to stuff in this call. The other place I would probably point to are the Discord channels where development happens, not necessarily getting in and needing to chat there, but just listening in to what's going on is a very useful way to just pick information up. You also get to read that kind of thing at your own leisure versus these kinds of calls. And then going beyond that, it depends on, I guess, what you're interested in. So if you're interested more on the cryptography side of things, then there are a bunch of good resources I can recommend for that kind of thing. The Halo 2 book is has some good intro level cryptography things geared towards you understanding Halo 2, but also more useful to the kinds of cryptography that we use here. You could pick up any of the Bitcoin books on how blockchains work to understand more of the context around the chain side of things that we discuss here. What else?
If you're interested in the things that are actually happening in the code at a high level, the Zcashd, which is github.com Zcash, and Zebra, which is github.com Zcash Foundation Zebra. Looking at the PRs, the pull requests that are coming in, will give you a flavor of what is literally happening in the code right now. And then those are the sort of entry points to the whole tree of dependencies that we both, the foundation and the ECC, maintain, that things like the Orchard crate, the Halo 2 crate, the Zcash addresses, wallets, the SDK, signature libraries, all of that stuff gets pulled into those main code repositories. So that's a good place to literally see the code changes that are happening, getting reviewed and getting merged into the upcoming releases of Zebra and Zcashd.
Yeah. And actually, on that point, another for these kinds of calls, the Arborist calls, where we're talking about development within the ecosystem and particularly development on the nodes and the full nodes. Look at PRs that have been made and just look at the kind of review going on, because that the review comments can often be very instructive in terms of what we're thinking about and and also the way in which we go about keeping the network secure and useful and performant and things, the kinds of considerations that we're taking when we think about things. At some point I want to have some time to put a few more of the review documents and guidelines and things into the Zcash book for the kinds of things we do there. We're already going to have to pull some of that out for the Halo 2 side. in terms of the way in which we go about that. At least is like our review guidelines and things, like, you know, what is sufficient review for us to consider it something we will use, which we're going to have to develop more to enable that kind of like nightly style thing I just mentioned. But yeah, if you're interested in like contributing to review or code or things, then code in particular, like looking at the way that we review things is a very easy way to figure out what kinds of code we like to see.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for that answer. Paco, I see you have your hand up here.
Yeah, I would say that for like newcomers, as long as we stay on proof of work, like getting familiar with every concept in the Mastering Bitcoin book is really helpful. Like getting the basics is the most important, because like if you want to get like a deep dive, you'll see those everywhere. So it will be really hard to catch up with the code and the zips and all that if you don't have like the base level covered, and you will be trying to like connecting the dots, and it will be really unbearable. So really like ECC was the first job I got that, you know, my first assignment was to actually read a book. It was like, oh, this is such a nerd place. But yeah, it's just like read the book, get familiar with the terms, and then like start diving into the Zcash, read the docs, and also, I don't know, if you want to just start by something like easier, like the light client protocol, is like has pictures and it's like nicely documented, a little bit outdated, but still easy to understand, and like, yeah, get to like how things work in the outside, and then getting to the protocol. And that would be my way if you like know almost nothing about crypto, but you're really into Zcash and the tech, and then get it from there. That's how I kind of like got into it, like with my like software engineering and like mostly like college, really poor math capacities of mine.
Awesome. Thanks, Paco.
And I just want to add, I want to add one more point onto this, which is that it's very easy for us as like the developers of this to have blind spots in terms of what is easy to understand, or ways. So like the whole spiel we just gave on like the answer to Ian's question on like, how can you learn this stuff? We very likely missed some things, and probably some of the things we pointed at are not particularly approachable or usable. So if you behind the screen there are trying to do this and are finding problems or like things that you're struggling with, please absolutely come and talk to us, or open an issue on the Zcash issue tracker, or chat in Discord or something. Issues are useful because they are persistent, but like the usability of the developer experience here is absolutely a usability problem. We don't necessarily always have the resources to keep it up to date with what we're currently doing or improving it and things, but knowing that, knowing the kinds of issues that people are having with it is very useful for them being able to instruct like the directions that we take the guides and the resources and things we have available when we do have the time to work on them. Like we've had a long-standing thing open for the explanatory ELI 15 section for Halo 2 book for like, if you don't understand anything, there is a link here, click it, go open an issue, and then we've got a record of this was a usability problem. And like a good half of them at least we fix pretty quickly. The other half are like, this is going to require rewriting like 3 separate pages of the book, which we don't have time to do right now. But I appreciate and acknowledge that this was a problem, and we definitely want to improve it. So yeah, same thing applies to basically all of the Zcash developer interface. Your people who are trying to learn it are the absolute best, the most skilled and have the most knowledge in what the problem is with trying to learn this.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for the color there. And thank you to everyone for attending the call this evening. The recording is going to be finished, working internally to ensure that the past couple of recordings and then also this one are uploaded, so people who are not able to attend the call have the opportunity to watch it if that be something they want to do. And then yes, obviously be on the lookout for the notes as well. If you were able to, had a few questions on the content in here. I know that ZK School takes really great notes on all these calls. We'll be posting those here shortly as well. So again, thank you to everyone who attended today, and we'll get this uploaded soon. And see you guys at the next one. Bye.
See you. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Yes.